In this video we're going to deal with equal opportunities. Now, discrimination occurs when an individual has been treated unfairly due to their protected characteristics. Protected characteristics is a legalistic term, but we can easily deal with it in terms of colour, race, culture, gender, disability. So if people are discriminated on any of these grounds, then it comes within the ambit of equal opportunities and is dealt with under this heading. Equal opportunities is an initiative that attempts to ensure that all individuals within employment are treated equally and fairly in employment. So it's an attempt to ensure that there is fairness at work and that individuals are not discriminated against on the basis of characteristics which are not germane to the workplace. These are not relevant in the context of work. Providing the employees are applying themselves diligently and efficiently and working in a manner which is productive and efficient and so on, providing they're meeting the general requirements of the tasks, there is no ground for discrimination. Discrimination is not just unfair and unethical, but it is counterproductive as well, because good workers can be lost from the workplace because of unfair practices. So equal opportunities is an initiative that tries to fix a wrong, sometimes fix the wrong before it happens, before discrimination can take place. So equal opportunities is an initiative that we need to be aware of. It's an important issue in the context of human resource management. Equal opportunity legislation ensures that people receive fair treatment. So there is a legal backdrop to this. There is an underpinning of the Equal Opportunities initiative. The legal underpinning is enacted in various Acts of Parliament in the UK. So, for example, Sex Discrimination Act, Race Relations Act, Equal Pay Act, Disability Discrimination Act, European Time Directive, Employment Act of 2008, Employment Relations Act, Work and Families Act, National Minimum Wage, and Data Protection Act. All of these contain clauses that bolster up the equal opportunities framework. So there's a long tradition in the UK going back to 1970, I think is the earliest one mentioned here. But there is a tradition going back quite a way in the UK to try and remove discrimination from the workplace. It's not fair that people should be discriminated against on the basis of their race or colour or gender or whatever. It's not relevant, and it's not easy to understand why that should take place. So the Parliament in the UK enacted these various pieces of legislation, which includes clauses on discrimination at work, to ensure that there was fairness in terms of promotion and treatment and pay and conditions across the board for all the employees, and that none were singled out or victimised or discriminated against on the basis of characteristics that were not relevant in the context of employment or employment in that particular occupation. The Equal Opportunities Policy, well, this policy must be embedded into an organisation's business strategy. The business strategy, whatever direction the business is moving, must recognise the importance of people, the importance of the employees. And within that, it must recognise that the employees be treated fairly. It would be unethical, downright wrong, to single out some individuals for unfair treatment on the basis of the colour of their skin or their religion or their culture, their gender, their disability. If they can do the job and they can work efficiently and have competencies that enable them to function effectively within the organisation, there is no grounds for anything untoward to happen to them in the context of their employment or their continued employment within that organisation. The aim of the policy is to outline key practices and procedures that ensure equal opportunities for all employees. So the policy should set out key practices and procedures. It should set out a modus operandi. It should set out a framework within which HRM policy will be enabled and enacted within the organisation, and it is essential that that policy ensures that there is equal opportunity within its framework. The policy must address key areas of development and equality for all individuals of a protected characteristic, that term again, which, as I said earlier, simply applies to the characteristics that we mentioned earlier. But the policy of the organisation should be equality, and there should not be discrimination in terms of, let's say, training or promotion prospects. They should be judged on their merit, their contribution, their effectiveness within the organisation, not judged on issues that are not within the ambit of the employment situation in which they find themselves. So it is wrong to discriminate against, let's say, women. If the women are performing tasks the same as men and doing essentially the same tasks, then why should they receive less? There is no moral case that can justify that. So the policy should remove that possibility. The same applies to different races and religions and cultures and so on. The importance of a policy, well, to identify and prevent any form of discrimination, harassment and victimization. So it's important that organizations have a policy, an equal opportunities policy, that remove the possibility of discrimination, harassment and victimization. It is essentially a form of bullying. It's a prejudice that could be carried to the workplace and could be vented in the form of bullying and out-and-out discrimination, where people are mistreated by managers or by line managers or by colleagues, their own colleagues, within the workplace, and in a sense bullied and victimized because of their protected characteristics. To identify positive action taken to ensure employees are treated equally and with respect. So the policy should do that. It should identify positive action taken to ensure employees are treated equally and with respect. What positive action does the organisation take? It could be awareness campaigns. It could be meetings with representatives, worker representatives, and it could be an item on the agenda for all meetings with employees or workers, an item on the agenda to ensure that there is an awareness across the organisation of the importance of this issue. It also shows that an organisation is promoting equal opportunities and implementing measures to protect employees and customers. It's important that the organisation can show it's doing that. Not just promoting the positive action and identifying forms of discrimination, which is essential, but it's also showing that it actually is approving of the policy of equal opportunities. It's approving of that policy and it's implementing the policy to ensure that this type of bad practice, this type of discrimination, harassment, victimization, bullying, if you like, is not part and parcel of the workplace within that organization. Now, the content of equal opportunities policy. Well, an equal opportunities policy must consist of the following. The aim, the purpose and outcome of an equal opportunity policy. An equal opportunity policy should have a name. It should have a purpose. The aim could be very simply stated as the removal of even the possibility of discrimination, harassment and so on. It should state what it's attempting to do. And it should be made available to all the employees for them to understand, to read, to ingest, and for them to ensure that they understand that the organisation is serious about implementing an equal opportunities policy. There should be action. How the organisation aims to achieve the equality? Mainly by the type of initiatives, positive action planning and grievance procedures. So if somebody has a problem at work which is based in discrimination, that person can bring a grievance issue against another person, against a manager or against a colleague. And the grievance procedure will deal with the situation fairly, openly, and logically. There may also be positive planning actions that the organisation can take. Sometimes these may be discussion groups. They can be examples of good practice. They can be awareness programs where employees are made aware that this is not acceptable, but is also they're made aware that if they see it or if they understand that it is being practiced within the organisation, they will alert senior management to this issue so that they can be addressed. There should be monitoring, programs in place for monitoring and reviewing and evaluation. It's important that equal opportunities is not just put in place and then forgotten about. It needs to be monitored, it needs to be checked, it needs to be reviewed and evaluated from time to time to see how it's working and what are the upsides and downsides of the policy as currently put forward. An equal opportunity policy must clearly define a name and purpose for developing a workplace policy. So there should be a clear aim, a clear purpose. The purpose could be succinctly stated as the eradication of the possibility of discrimination, victimization and so on within the workplace. But it's important that it's specified, it's recorded and published for the rest of the workforce and the rest of the management to see that this is the purpose of this equal opportunity policy. The aim must identify the existence of discrimination. It's certainly imperative that a policy be put in place if there is evidence of the existence of discrimination. If the management are suspicious that there is malpractice somewhere within the organisation, then the case for an equal opportunity policy is watertight. It's fundamental. So if there is evidence of the existence of discrimination within the workplace, then it's imperative that this policy be implemented. The aim must identify how it affects people, how it should affect behaviour and attitudes, and how it should affect working relationships. The people who work for companies, generally speaking, work for the companies for an income, for a salary, so that they may survive in life, that they may pay their bills and look after their families. And they are going through the process of working to enable them to do that. They're not going through the process of working to be insulted or abused, or be discriminated against, or victimized, or bullied. So this needs to be brought across. The aims of the introduction of an equal opportunities policy should specify exactly why it's important. What are the aims? So why your organisation wants to implement a policy. Well, I say any organisation. Why does it want to implement this policy? Well, I suppose the simple answer to that is that it's the right thing to do. That it's the moral thing to do. But it's also the case that the organisation wishes to have a harmonious workforce, a workforce that's pulling together. Because a workforce that's pulling together and getting along together is more productive. It's more content. There are less issues to be dealt with. So it's a more efficient workforce. That's the economic argument. But as I said, the overwhelming argument or answer to the question why your organisation wants to implement the policy is because it's the moral thing to do. It's the right thing to do, to ensure that people are not abused or punished simply because they look different, or different culture, or different background, or they have different traditions. Providing they can work and work efficiently, and providing they make an effort themselves to integrate into the teams and the working situations, so that they don't isolate themselves. And if they do isolate themselves, that may be for a reason based on discrimination itself and needs inquiry. But the real reason to have the policy is, as I said, it's because it's the right thing to do. Should also try to set out what the policy will achieve. It'll achieve not just better working relations, but it'll achieve a more contented mind for people who perhaps in the past have suffered or may suffer as a consequence of discrimination. People can go to work without fear. People can earn a living without fear, and that's important. Newell in 2002 provides a brief introduction to Equal Opportunities Statement. I'm not going to deal with this in detail. I'll ask you to read it because it's quite an elaborate statement, but I'll ask you to read it and just look over it. Perhaps stop the video and make your own notes from it. But it goes on to say this organisation recognises that discrimination exists in society, but is committed to ensuring that no member of this organisation or potential member in the future is treated less favourably because of their sex, marital status, race, disability or sexual orientation. It also guarantees that no group will be disadvantaged by a condition or requirement that is not deemed to be essential for a particular job. It's worth noting it because it's a statement that covers the various types of discrimination that may take place, and it tries to get an institutional response to that. Now the action phase of policy formation is a crucial stage. It explains the process and practical application of programs which aim to ensure equality within the workplace. The action stage is ensuring that the policy is not just written up and disseminated amongst the workforce and amongst the management, but there is action. There is a follow-up on this, that it's monitored and progressed. And I'll talk about monitoring in a second, but it is monitored and there is progress based on its implementation to ensure that everyone's aware of it and it's constantly being brought up and discussed within the organization. It is the actions that an organization has taken or will take in order to promote equal opportunities. And as I said, these actions could be events, for example, training events, which emphasizes the need for equal opportunities. It could be pamphlets, leaflets. It can be discussion groups, if these are used. It can be any opportunity in which management and employees meet face to face, and in any formal meetings that it's fed back because it was discussed, because, as I said earlier, it could be a permanent agenda item which is considered at every meeting between management, at different layers of management. It doesn't have to be management employees, it could be different layers of management meeting and simply having the issue on the agenda, an item on the agenda, and any issues related to discrimination or victimization or whatever is discussed there. There are a range of approaches, such as positive action, code of conduct, resolving complaints and grievances, and something called Opportunity 2000. Sometimes positive action may be seen as somewhat controversial because people who have not engaged in discrimination may feel that they are being discriminated against by the introduction of positive action, because they themselves are innocent of any discrimination. But because positive action has been introduced, they feel that people from particular backgrounds are getting advantages over them, and they see that as unfair. So care has to be taken with the introduction of positive action. We'll talk about it again shortly. Now, action must identify the following factors: how the organisation ensures that all employees gain equal access to services and training. So it should be open to all employees. There may be situations where some employees are singled out for special training because of their particular skills and aptitudes and abilities and so on. And that's understandable, but sometimes training applies to everyone. Well, then, if it applies to everyone and is suitable for everyone within the organisation, why should some people be excluded? What's the basis for their exclusion? And if the basis for their exclusion is based on their colour, gender, race, culture, sexual orientation, based on whatever, then that is discrimination. And that's what needs to be dealt with. The types of investment in facilities to ensure people with disabilities have equal access to resources. It's interesting, given the developments in industry over the last probably 20 years, a greater reliance now on computer technology and on communications channels and so on. Therefore, a lot of people sit down at desks all day long, dealing with this type of technology and communicating efficiently with each other electronically and performing functions related to finance or marketing or whatever, desk-based activities, and therefore ideally suited to some disabled people. And yet, perhaps organisations have not employed a full quota of disabled people who have suitable skills. Now, that could be symptomatic of discrimination. It could be symptomatic of ignorance. Sometimes people are afraid to employ certain people because they don't know what's involved. Or it may be cost-cutting. They don't want to modify the buildings, modify doors and passageways, and introduce special toilet facilities or whatever. But the type of investment in facilities to ensure people with disabilities have equal access to resources. That's the one of the action points. Initiatives in place to make all employees feel involved and as part of a team. What initiatives can take place? It could be away days. It could be training exercises, like I said. It could be even social functions run by the business to try and instill greater identity with the business and more harmony and more contact with the employees, and letting the employees meet each other perhaps in a more informal setting. A range of methods used for communicating the equal opportunity policy to all members. The range of methods could be, as I said, meetings. It could be on the agenda of all meetings conducted within the organisation. Sometimes just as a reminder, but it could be published on the intranet, it could be on the notice board, there could be a booklet produced, it could be training sessions. There's a range of methods that could be deployed in the context of disseminating this message, this information about equal opportunities. The Code of Conduct, well, this stage must consider actions taken towards treatment of others within a workplace setting. For example, the Code of Conduct. What is the Code of Conduct? What is acceptable and unacceptable? Now, it's difficult to specify sometimes what is acceptable because it covers such a wide range of possibilities. But what is not acceptable, that may be categorized probably easier. So bullying, abusive behavior, insulting behavior, lack of opportunities, discrimination in training, in promotion. Now, the Code of Conduct could cover, perhaps more easily, what's going wrong rather than what is going right. The policy must communicate how individuals and groups should be treated. There should be statements as to how groups and individuals be treated. Behaviour within the organisation should be acceptable behaviour. What is acceptable in the wider society? What's acceptable from a moral perspective? What is the right way to deal with people? People who are in the workplace trying to earn a living, to look after themselves and their families. What's the right way to deal with these individuals? The right way to deal with them is as humans, not as objects for insult or abuse. The expectations of employees and employers, these should be communicated. What do the employers expect? They expect harmony within the workforce. They expect people to work together, to cooperate, to work as teams, to support each other. That's what the employers essentially expect. They expect diligence, interest in the job, promotion prospects based on competencies and training and so on. Engagement. What do the employees expect? Well, recognition for their efforts, remuneration, holiday entitlement, some conditions of employment, whatever they are, but also to be respected within the workplace. To be respected by the management and to be respected by their colleagues. And in the same way, they should respect the management and their colleagues. There's a mutuality of respect required. Respect and value for others regardless of their protected characteristics. So regardless of their colour, religion, culture, their gender, their disability, their sexual orientation, regardless of anything, it's having respect for each other so that they can work together and be confident in the support that they can give each other. Information on grievance and complaints procedures should be included in the policy. If there are issues to be addressed in the workplace, issues related to discrimination and so on, then there should be provision for some grievance procedure to be implemented, some complaints procedure, and there should be a way of in which the person who suffers can get redress, can get the situation resolved, and the process should be fair, transparent, open. It should not be biased itself. It would be a travesty of justice if someone bringing a case for discrimination to a grievance procedure and find that the grievance procedure itself was discriminating. That would be a complete travesty. So it's important that the process is fair and open. Now, positive action. Well, positive action outlines the incentives undertaken by an organisation which promote equal opportunities. Now, these incentives could be getting workers to cooperate more and ensuring that they're working under good conditions and they are being supported by management, and making sure that the people who are moved into other positions, perhaps being lined up for promotion, say someone from a minority group lined up for promotion, making sure that they have the support of management and that the situation is being monitored. Positive action, as I said earlier, has a slight downside, however. Sometimes there are innocent people, let's say amongst the employees, who are not discriminating, or who are not bad people. Perhaps it's just done by a minority. So the majority are good, decent people earning a living and doing their jobs correctly. But there's a minority who are discriminating against some people, let's say. Now, if positive action is put in place to help the people who are suffering the discrimination, then that positive action, in a sense, discriminates against the majority who were not involved in any bad behaviour in the past. So care has to be taken about positive action to make sure that it's seen as fair universally and that it has the support of everyone. There's understanding and support for the case by all employees and all management. Because it's easy for positive action to discriminate against people who are innocent of any bad or wrongdoing. Positive action encourages positive change in areas such as recruitment, training and promotion of previously underrepresented groups. Well, as I said, that is all very well, but in terms of recruitment, it may alienate some people who are not bad people. It may alienate them and think, well, this is so unfair. They didn't do anything wrong, and now they can't have the opportunities to get promotion, let's say, or to gain additional training or whatever. So they feel alienated. In fact, it could be counterproductive. It could lead to people who were previously well behaved and certainly not involved in any discrimination or any bad behaviour. They find that they no longer have these opportunities. The opportunities are now specifically targeting the people who suffered discrimination in the past. If that's the case, it may alienate the good ones and cause a deterioration in the situation. So it has to be dealt with sensitively, and it has to be dealt with case by case to ensure that everyone is on board. Everyone knows what's happening, knows the logic of what's happening, understands it, and no one is being disadvantaged as a consequence of it. The action stage must outline the positive action taken by the organisation which promotes equality. But the positive action itself, as I said, should not hurt innocent people who were caught up in the discrimination or in the victimization of certain people. There are innocent victims, perhaps, and they then find themselves discriminated against because the institution is given positive preference to the people who suffered this evil act, who suffered the discrimination. So it has to be done sensitively. It's not just a policy that can be implemented without a lot of thought, and as far as possible it has to be as open as possible to enable everyone to see that they can subscribe, but at the same time enables people who are discriminated and who were victimized in the past, enables them to participate equally and properly with others for promotion and for training and so on. Positive action approaches, well, ensuring that equal opportunities is given a high priority, employing managers and directives to develop and promote strategies for equality. So it's important that it's monitored correctly and that it's given high priority within the organisation. Equal opportunities is important, so it should be given high priority. Offering greater flexibility and a range of workplace contracts such as flexible hours, annual hours, term time work, school day holidays, career breaks, return to work schemes. For example, female workers may leave to have a child, but it's unfair if they lose their job as a consequence. They should be able to return to work. If possible, there should be flexibility in the workplace. If someone can work particular hours and get their job done, then why shouldn't they have some flexibility to be able to manage or juggle the demands of home life and work life? Why not have career breaks for some people who may wish to attend courses or college courses or do other things and come back to work if possible? The organisation should explore possibilities and enable the workforce in general, to have this type of flexibility. And that would also benefit in the fight against discrimination and victimization and issues within the workforce, because there is less pressure on the workforce. They feel more relaxed about their employment and they feel more content at the workforce because they feel it's a caring organisation and they want to be a part of it. So they relate to each other perhaps a bit better. Positive action approaches, well, offering a range of apprenticeships to school leavers, management vacancies and graduate schemes for new graduates. It could be seen as positive action, but as I said earlier, if it's designated for some people only, then others may view that as discriminatory. So it's ensuring that whatever range of apprenticeships or management vacancies or graduate schemes, that these are carefully monitored during the recruitment stage to ensure that everyone was given equal opportunity to apply and was given equal consideration, fair consideration, based on merit. Offering promotion opportunities for internal staff. They can build their careers and sustain long-term employment. Again, making sure it's based on merit, on competencies, on skills, on diligence, and on application, on their commitment to the work and to the organisation, not based on their colour or their background or whatever. It's based on workplace characteristics, their application to the job, their ability to perform the tasks. Implementing assertiveness training to support minority groups in developing their career potential. Sometimes minority groups may be too reluctant to apply because they're fearful of the possibility of promotion or taking on extra responsibility, and they're worried about the implications of dealing with other people and having to give directions to other people from positions of authority. Maybe the organisation could deal with that by training all the operators, not just the minority operators, but all the operators in how to manage, in how to deal with people and how to give instructions and delegate responsibility, and ensure that it's done in a language and in a manner that's acceptable to all sections of the workforce. Encouraging a range of training and learning schemes to meet the needs of a range of people working for the organisation. It's legitimate to think that certain people will need training in certain directions, others won't, simply because people are different. Some people will need certain learning schemes and other people won't. So having a range of training and learning schemes, if the organisation can afford that, may be a positive thing to do, so that the workforce are acquiring generic skills, wider skills. It's like a continuation of learning, which is to be encouraged, but also specific skills for the organisation, which will enable them to enhance their career prospects within the organisation. And that should be made available equally throughout the workforce. And people who perhaps were victims of discrimination or victimization, they should be positively approached and encouraged to join in case there is a reticence on their part for fear of retribution or further discrimination or comments or insults or whatever. They should be encouraged to join in and to face off those issues with the support of management. Training and learning programs should meet the needs of individual learning needs. There's a variety of learning styles that can be used. We'll talk about the VAC one in a separate video, but the point is that training and learning programs should meet needs of individual learners. It depends on the resources of the organisation if they can do this, if they can fund very detailed training programs and develop the individuals in this way. After all, the organisation is there to make a profit, perhaps, and if it spends a lot on training programs, it may eat into its profitability. In addition, it may train employees who will subsequently leave the organisation and take their new skills to other organisations, to competitor organisations, in fact. So there might be issues about the organisation providing training of this type. Accommodating for people with disabilities, making sure there's, for example, wheelchair access, large print documents, and interpreters. Well, interpreters may be an expense that the organisation can't afford. They employ the workers to perform particular tasks. If they have to employ an interpreter, they're really employing two people then. So productivity has been halved. So employing interpreters may not be something that employers want to do. So there are issues, but where possible, the organisation can flex and provide wheelchair access, for example. That's only fair. Large print documents, that might be possible, but many computer programs now enable the user to enlarge the print on the screen. So that might be a solution. The point is that the organisation should be creative in trying to solve the problems and should consult with the employees to try and find good solutions to the problems. Opportunity 2000 was a campaign launched in 1991. The goal of this initiative was to increase awareness of women workers. Women workers are very important in society. It's now the case that females outperform males in many examinations. I think at A level in the UK, in many school examinations and so on. And I think more female students attend university. So this is a vast resource, productive resource within the country. Therefore, it's ludicrous, just on economic grounds, to have discrimination against this section of the workforce. It makes absolutely no economic sense. Now that's forgetting the moral arguments. That's forgetting the fundamental arguments that should be made that simply discrimination is wrong. But just taking an economic view, it's crazy. But having said that, it does happen. Female workers have a lot of obligations. They have obligations to families, for example. Perhaps they're looking after their parents, or they have young children. And they have competing demands. Having the facility within the workplace to enable female workers to have the flexibility to cope with these situations is not a bad thing, because the organisation is getting a skilled worker, a skilled employee, someone with talent and competence and possibility of future development, perhaps leading into management or even into senior management or becoming the CEO itself. These are opportunities that come with the female workforce, a skilled population, and the organisation should reciprocate by having some sort of flexibility towards them to enable them to fulfil their other obligations. They are, in a sense, multitasking. The campaign worked to provide equality to women workers, ensuring they had rights and received equal pay and promotion opportunities. It's difficult to imagine sometimes why a certain group of workers who are doing exactly the same work as, let's say, male workers, they should receive less. It's difficult to comprehend the logic in that. And yet, campaigns like this one were required to highlight the issue and to promote greater understanding of the role of female workers and their contribution and justify them in the workplace, which should not have been needed. It should have been clear what their contribution was and the unfairness of them getting less. They're doing the same job. They're doing perhaps they're doing even a better job, but they were receiving less. It does not make sense, and for that reason, there are programs such as the one here that come into existence, and they're still coming into existence to try and highlight the importance of non-discrimination at work and introducing flexibility at work to accommodate this type of worker. If flexibility is possible, then it should be made available. An equality policy must take into consideration the Opportunity 2000 campaign and ensure equality for women workers. It's important that, as I said, that people are treated equally. It's important that it's done on the basis of gender, disability, colour, creed, so on. If people are doing the work and doing it properly and efficiently and are productive, there is no logical case to discriminate against them. And that's just the economic argument, as I keep saying. There is the moral argument, which is much more fundamental. Now, monitoring. Well, an equal opportunities policy must be continuously reviewed and monitored. A policy should be reviewed annually. Well, that's just a benchmark, reviewing it annually. It could be reviewed every 6 months. But the point is, the policy should be reviewed. It's no good having a policy and just leaving it, because people will forget about it. It'll become less important over time. So it's important that it's an active policy, and that employees and management at all levels are aware of its importance, and make sure that it's in front of them continuously. Some organisations expect their employees to complete equal opportunity monitoring forms to provide information on the current equal opportunities policy. That may be a good idea. It may be an idea to ask employees to complete forms, but the design of the forms and the content of the forms may be problematic. Ensuring that the language is clear and that there is nothing insulting, or there's nothing to suggest that there is discrimination against perhaps innocent people within the workforce who belong to the majority, but nonetheless are innocent of any misbehaviour, to make sure that there's no discrimination against them. So the design of the forms could be problematic. But having said that, an opportunity to deal with employees and get them to feedback their feelings about the equal opportunities policy is a good thing. It shows awareness of the policy, and it shows that they are familiar with what is required. A better way of doing it than completing forms may be having face-to-face meetings, perhaps line managers being instructed to have short meetings with the workforce and canvassing their opinions and recording their opinions and feeding that back. It may be an alternative. Feedback from monitoring ensures that the success of the current policy and any changes that needs to be made. Feedback is always useful. It flags up how successful a policy is, and it also flags up if any modifications are required or any new issues have come up that perhaps are not currently covered. So feedback is something that should be sought out, and feedback should be a part of the culture of the organisation. An equal opportunities policy should be continuously reviewed and monitored. A policy should be reviewed annually. Well, I think we've just dealt with that one. And I think we've already dealt with that one as well. So I think, in fact, we have got to the end of this session. The last couple of slides were reproduced. I'm sorry about that. That's what we're going to say about equal opportunity. It's a very important area. It's important that people who go to work go there and are not in fear of the staff or of their colleagues, are not degraded in any way or insulted or abused. They should be treated with dignity, and they should have the same opportunities as everyone else. And the onus is on management to ensure that the environment within which they work is secure, fair, reasonable, and adequately monitored to ensure that anything untoward is flagged up and dealt with speedily. So equal opportunities is an important issue within the workplace, and it's important that the HR department have an equal opportunities policy and that it's published and understood, properly disseminated amongst the workforce, and it's monitored and kept up to date. With all of that, it's to be hoped that the need for active intervention would be minimized, that there would be an enlightenment amongst the workforce to ensure that this bad behaviour is stamped out. But that's all we're going to deal with here. That's the source I mentioned earlier on. So let's leave it at that and say thank you for watching.